Welcome back guys on my YouTube channel. Today I'm here in beautiful Tuscany to test the brand new Beta 2025 models. They changed the name of the bikes. These are the RRX Pro. Now I will list you all the differences with the 2024 model. Then we'll get our helmets and start riding here on the Tuscany trails. Very tight trails to very fast sections, because we also have a cross test where we can really see which bike shines, and I'll let you know which will be the bike I prefer between the 2 strokes and the 4 strokes, because we have here all the range from the 125 to the 480cc. Let's start looking at all the new details of this bike. First of all, you can see it. That's the overall design of the plastics that has a new design, but also the color has changed. Now we have white plastic with a brand new graphic. These plastics are a bit wider, a bit bigger on the rear, so in order to protect a bit more from the mud. The radiator shrouds are more minimal. The same goes with the headlight mask and the handguards. I really like the new handguards because they have a taller profile, but at the same time they are smaller in width. They give a good protection, and being in this flexible plastic, we'll have less risks to break them when we crash. The biggest focus for 2025 for Beta was the handling of the bike. That's where they put the biggest effort, modifying several things. Let's start from the fork. It's always the ZF fork, but it's not an evolution of the 2024 model. This has been developed again from the ground up, and it also has different features because it's not a symmetrical scheme, meaning the forks don't do the same job at the same time. We have one side focusing more on the dampening and on the compression of the fork, and the other side focusing more on the flow of the oil. Furthermore, it has a bit less travel, and the bike has lowered of 20 millimeters, meaning that when we are off-road on the trails and in tricky sections, it will be easier to put our feet down, but it will also be more accessible for riders of smaller heights. Speaking instead of the rear shock, which was developed in combination with the brand new front fork, this is a revised version of the 2024 model, where the setting and the sensibility it gives the rider has been improved in order to give the rider a much finer feeling also when changing the adjustments. Another big improvement comes from the frame. It has changed in the headstock section and the front center tube. This is 1 centimeter wider, giving a better stability at high speeds and making the bike more linear in turns, especially when riding into ruts. This bigger front headstock also added a bit of rigidity to the bike. This made then Beta decide to put the handlebar on silent blocks. These will make the riding less tiring and more comfortable, as these anti-vibration rubbers that are placed underneath the handlebar reduce the vibrations and reduce the impacts when having harsh impacts on obstacles such as rocks and trees. To help the average enduro rider get the really pro feel, the rear brake is new. We have a Nissin brake caliper. That's really important, especially like now that it's summer and we have really high temperatures, because you know you're always riding with that foot slightly on the rear brake, and with the Nissin brake you're gonna be sure you'll never bottom out that brake or overheat it. The seat then is slightly changed. You can't really see it, but underneath here there is a softer foam, making it more comfortable, together with a new textured material which offers a discreet grip, but at the same time won't make your ass burn on long rides. The first and most interesting new feature of all the Beta 2025 models comes directly from a patent deposited by Beta, and this is this magnetic key. This is really interesting because they managed to do a device that's really compact and doesn't impact in any way the weight, but this magnetic key prevents your bike from being stolen, or at least from being turned on, because when not on the bike you won't be able to turn on your bike. And on the enduro bikes we don't want to have an ignition switch with a key, because we know we go through mud, we go through so much that it happens so many times that the key breaks. fits inside the locks. In this way, this is magnetic, comes off. The other very important aspect comes from the safety, because if we strap this around our wrist when we are riding, in case of crash, this will detach as it's magnetic and stay on with us, and it will shut off the bike. Very important, because we know sometimes we crash and the bike remains full throttle and could shoot off in the woods. In this way, this will prevent and help our safety. From this view, you can also see the handlebar pad has changed and the map switch. Before, it used to be here behind the headstock and in front of the fuel tank. Now it's up here inside the bar pad. This makes it much more visible, but also much more accessible when riding and we want to change map. Lastly, the introduction of this strap makes us understand what's the purpose of the bike and why it changed its name from RR to RRX Pro. The reason is Beta wants this to be the ultimate enduro and hard enduro bike that you'll ever want to buy. Now that we are here in the forest, I can say there's a lot of difference between two-stroke and four-stroke. The two-stroke is super reactive. You jump from one side of the trail to the other really quickly and easy, and if you have obstacles, it's easy to overcome them. The only thing, at least for my riding style, it's a bit too nervous. On the other hand, the four-stroke is way more stable on the trails and in the loose rocks. Clearly, it's a bit tougher to ride physically, but I prefer also the acceleration of the four-stroke combined with the higher stability. It helps a lot. So yeah, I prefer the four-stroke. Only little downside I found on these bikes that it's easy to solve is the steering is too loose, so it can be really good in the extreme enduro and in the tight trails, but as soon as you pick up a bit of speed, I would tighten it a bit more so that it becomes stiffer to turn. In this way, it improves stability, especially on the loose rocks. Well guys, we're at the end of this incredible test here in Tuscany, 2 days in which we had loads of fun on the 2025 RRX Pro models. To start with, I'll tell you which bikes I enjoyed more from the two-stroke side and from the four-stroke side. For the two-stroke, the one I loved most was the RR 300cc. It's no wonder that this is the most sold enduro bike of all the brands in Italy, thanks to its incredible torque, but at the same time, the smoothness in acceleration that it has that makes you ride it almost like a four-stroke, but having the agility that only a two-stroke has, together with the explosiveness when you need to overcome some big obstacle. 125cc, 200cc, loved also those bikes, but now that I'm getting older, it's hard to just spin it all the time and be super reactive, having your reflex so fast. But if that's what you're looking for, the 125 for sure is loads of fun and makes you feel like a 16 years old. Speaking of the four-stroke, and always speaking about the engine performance and the general feel of the bike, and then I'll move on the handling and the new features. On the four-stroke, I thought the 390 was the best overall because it's like right in the middle. Most amateurs would go with the 350, which I wouldn't really recommend because the 390 has that bit more torque that makes it more usable in any situation, especially, you know, when you're climbing up that hill and like you're not having a lot of stability, maybe it's muddy, you're losing your legs, you're going down with the throttle and the bike is revving down. With the 350 in that situation, you have to shift down a gear, whereas on the 390 you have that bit more that you can keep the same gear and still have some torque to make it rev up back again. So for me, the 390 was like a small tractor. I would get around everywhere without having to rev it up really hard. On the other hand, the 430 and the 480, clearly more powerful, but also you feel the more weight and you need to be physically more fit to handle those bikes. So I believe the 390 was that way in between where any amateur can really enjoy their enduro ride. Speaking about the handling of the bike, since the frame, the suspensions, everything is common on all the 8 variations. And one very interesting aspect is I think Beta is the bike that has the more variables, starting from 125 all the way to 480cc. The feeling is more or less the same on all the different bikes, as the front end of the frame being thicker and with the new forks, the feeling I had was that in situations where I would have to enter a turn, and like you're entering a turn with lots of little bumps and really pushing hard, the feeling was I had more stability, I felt safer. So this would translate in me feeling I could push more, especially entering the turns and entering ruts. The linear stability has definitely improved thanks to the new forks and the rear shock. For me and my weight, they're probably a bit too soft because I'm about 100 kilograms. So it depends on what type of riding you do. If you do a type of riding where you're going slow in the trails and doing technical sections, so extreme enduro, or if you're going on very, very fast sections and you know you need that extra stiffness. But speaking about stiffness, I really appreciated the end dampening of the suspensions. I felt it was less harsh on my arms, and overall, since I attended all the press launches, I think since 2014, 2015 of Beta, I felt that these new models got me a bit less tired because the feeling on my arms was less harsh. This, I believe, is the combination of the new fork, but also of the silent blocks that are placed on the handlebar. This is a mixed feeling because yes, it's more comfortable, it gets you less tired, but in certain situations, not having the silent blocks means that you have a more sincere reaction to your arms. So it really depends. If you're not so trained, better with. If you're looking, you know, for that really fine performance and you're looking to have the feeling on every rock, on every bump, then probably without the silent blocks, that's better. Something underestimated probably is the position of the levers. What I mean is that these levers on the new Betas are very inwards on the handlebar. This means that if you see the profile of the handlebar, they're really away from the external, so less risks when crashing of breaking the levers. But for me, the riding feeling was that I could ride with only one finger on both levers and they were always nice and in reach. Other than the levers, I don't know why, but I really like the profile of the handlebar. Now, this is the same as last year's, but I think it's worth mentioning because having this bar bend, and the bar is quite straight, but it's not such an extreme high bend. This makes it so that when you're standing up, if you're thinking of buying a bike for rallies maybe, or for adventure riding, it might not be that comfortable. But on the other side, it's super comfortable when going into turns. You have much more control with a low bend rather than with a high bend, because you'll need less effort to bring down the bike and really put it at an angle to make the turns. Furthermore, overall, for my riding style, I feel I have more control. Speaking of the handlebar, the map switch is much more visible, so I always see in which map I am, and this pushes me to play more around with the maps depending on the situation, because you know you have the rain map and the sun map. So if I'm in very technical trails, I'll put the rain map so that I have a bit more grip and less aggressiveness. If I'm on sand, for example, or on nice dirt soil, I'll put the sun map, so that's much more aggressive. For sure, I really appreciated the most interesting, in my opinion, feature of the bike, which is the magnetic key. The magnetic key, from a safety point of view, it helps because not only in case of crash, the bike will turn off, but even from a mental point of view, I don't know why, I felt safer in trying different things. Like if there was a steep uphill and I was unsure, you know, I was hesitant, I would still try it, because just knowing I had this on my wrist and that in case something went wrong, I would just turn off the bike. It made me feel safer, so I believe this is something really cool, and I'm sure that other manufacturers in future will try different systems like the patented one by Beta. It's always nice because in off-road we don't see so much advancement in technology, and even though this is not crazy technology, still it's a new tech upgrade that has never been seen on enduro bikes. Speaking then about extreme enduro, which I'm not a big fan of, luckily today I never had to use this strap and managed to get everywhere here on the Tuscany trails. Another small interesting features that we tested today was the new reservoir for the coolant. We have 200cc of reservoir inside the frame, so if we overheat the bike, the coolant will go in this reservoir and then we won't just lose it along the way. This, we know, is really important when we do hard enduro. Well guys, be sure to write down in the comments what are your thoughts. Let me know if you already own a Beta, what you think about these new 2025 models and of the new features. Be sure to subscribe to my Instagram page, to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!